It's a simple choice, but it should not be made simply. Heretic comes to us from A24 and the writer director team of Scott Beck. He's got 2 turntables and a microphone. Scott Beck has got 2 turntables and a microphone. Do. He's done other films along with Brian Woods, whose Woodsies are, I have no clue. They're not Brian's as Woods because it's not pluralized. Anyway, nobody can actually own the Woods. Maybe they can. Maybe they can own a copy of The Woods. Nevertheless, Heretic, basically, it's done by this team. They did Haunt and 65. Didn't like 65. I can't even drive 65. But this features Hugh Grant as Mr. Reed. Not Lou Reed, Rex Reed, Jake Reed, Willis Reed. You do that somewhere else? Sure, Reed. I'm just going to throw out references like this before I really get into the whole thing. So if you don't like goofy intros, skip ahead a little bit. Anyway, Hugh Grant plays Mr. Reed, and a couple missionaries, basically, from the Church of Latter-day Saints, they show up, and, well, it turns out they're actually at the wrong house. Not that they didn't intend to go to this house, but this is the wrong house, because Mr. Reed is super smart, and also a bit absolutely off his tits, shall we say. So, you have the 2 sisters. You have Sister Barnes, Sophie Thatcher, and Sister Paxton. No relation to Bill, I assume. I don't think. Played by Chloe East, who I do have to say has a standout performance in this. I've seen Sophie Thatcher and stuff, but I'd not really heard of Chloe East. I need to check out more of her stuff. And also, Topher Grace is in this. Virtually unfucking recognizable. I didn't even know that was him until I saw the credits. Now, nevertheless, you have these two religious girls that are talking to people. They're talking about various things. They end up kind of on the end of a particular prank for no reason other than people can be cruel. Look, I'm no religious person, but there's no reason to do that shit. And then they end up at Mr. Reed's house, and it turns out this is no ordinary house, and they basically must figure out a way to get out. We get some discussions of various religions, how many, things originate from, like, the completely original creation, shall we say, Judaism, Islam, that kind of stuff, and various forms of Christianity and spin-offs, Catholicism, all that. It really does center around the big 3, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, not necessarily in that order, by the way, the big 3. And also there's some great discussions involving board games and fast food and even a little bit of Star Wars and everything. And Hugh Grant is giving one of the best performances of his goddamn career here because he is ultra creepy, ultra weird. And while I am no religious person, as I've said before and just said just a second ago, I will say that as far as dealing with the particular subject matter of this and diving into the minutia and getting very, very creepy as just with talking, and then when things really start to hit you like, oh, okay, that's where we're going with that. All right, yeah, okay, all right, as Denzel Washington said in Training Day, maybe with a lot more enthusiasm and insanity than I did. But I was looking forward to Heretic because I'd heard a lot about it. When you slap A24, especially on a horror label, oh, hell yeah, I'm absolutely in. Talk to Me was one of my favorite movies of last year. That was fucking terrific. I need to rewatch that again. I just watched it just a couple months ago. But Heretic I was excited for because I'm like, okay, how are they going to do this? And when I saw what the team was, I go, okay, that doesn't exactly inspire much confidence, but all right, let's give it a shot. And you know what? It actually turned out to be pretty goddamn good, ironically, given the fact that it's religious. Sophie Thatcher is very good. Again, Chloe East is very, very good in this. This actually is the kind of breakout performance just based on what she has to do and what she has to respond to, and the fact that it is minimalist. It is a one-location shoot. Outside of some of the external stuff, it is a one-location shoot for 90% of this. And it takes place only in a few rooms. And it actually somehow manages to feel like you can't get out of this particular house because, yeah, there's something weird going on here. It's not just any ordinary man that is bringing a couple missionary girls into his house. Not just for the missionary position. Gross, but nevertheless. So, the movie is fucking terrific. Has some great performances. It has a couple pacing issues, I think. There are a couple convenient points where I'm like, okay, like, I mean, that makes sense. I figured out where it was going very early on when one character mentioned one particular thing, and then there was an earlier chat between the two girls that I felt would lead to something, and I was right. And it's not like predicting stuff is necessarily, a groundbreaking thing. Many people do. But yeah, Heretic actually turned out to be pretty goddamn good, and it really does show that, religion can poison a lot of people, for good and bad. It can poison you in a positive way because some people can get so wrapped up in it, but you can use the powers for good. Or you can get so wrapped up in it that you could end up letting it dominate your life and you can end up searching for the one true religion. And that is just going to take me right into the spoiler section. So I'm going to get into spoilers. It's in theaters. If you want to check it out, A24 did a great job distributing this. But the team of Scott Beck, 2 turntables and a microphone, as well as Brian Woods, along with Hugh Grant, delivering a great performance. Sophie Thatcher, Chloe East, doing great stuff. And even Topher Grace, who only really had a minor role, he was good too. But I'm going to get into spoilers. 3, 2, 1, spoilers. So basically, they end up, the 2 girls, Barnes and Paxton, sounds like a goddamn Quinn Martin production. They're just going around talking to girls. There's actually this one neat little shot with these stairs that this side, this side, this side, this side, this side, almost like the maze that they're going to go through a little bit later on. And a maze, so to speak, that is. Picking different paths that you have to go up to get to your destination. And then these girls, are just playing out in the street, and then they want to get a picture. And then they ask, it's Chloe East, I have a question, do you wear magic underwear? And they pants her. Why would you do that? Again, I've been annoyed by missionaries before. Don't need to do that. They are people at the end of the day. Weird people, but still don't do that. Nevertheless, they get to Mr. Reed's house, but a storm starts hitting. Almost like this is a sign you probably should have gone home and maybe just done this another day or not gone to that house at all. They tie up their bikes, and then they go in. And they're just staying out in the rain, by the way. But basically, Mr. Reed says, oh, yeah, sure, this kind of stuff. Well, you want to come in? We're out in the rain here. Well, we can't come in without a woman present. Well, my wife's home. Is that okay? Sure. And does he bring out his wife right away? No. Because he doesn't have a wife, by the way. Just in case you didn't figure that out. And Hugh Grant, by the way, ultra creepy right from the beginning. And I mean that with respect. Because Hugh Grant does a great job here. But he's like, she's baking pie. Let's do this. It's a weird house or whatever. Sometimes the electricity has some issues. What the hell's going on here? He decides to go back and check on the pie. He offers them drinks, and it's just normal drinks and everything. But they look at the candle. There's a candle burning. The candle is blueberry pie. And this is after he's talked to them about various religions, about various things and stuff like that. He has talked about, all kinds of stuff and hasn't even gotten into the full-on creep mode. I did like how when they couldn't get out, and he even mentioned a little bit earlier, there's metal, inside. Is that okay? The metal blocks cell phone signals. And you find out why a little bit later. Basically, they have to find him. They have to find their coats because they have the bike key to, take the bike lock off and go home. And they're willing to walk home, but that would be pretty tough. But then they end up talking to him, and basically he talks about, Judaism, Christianity, Islam, all that stuff. He talks about these big 3. He talks about searching for the perfect religion. He says, unfortunately, I found it. And we know what it is. I mean, it's pretty obvious what he's doing from the beginning, but the way they tell this is actually pretty good because when they finally go, it clicks. Then he talks about, example, board games. Talk about Monopoly, this old version of Monopoly. I swear, I used to have that until I think the box just rotted away and whatever. And then I got a more recent edition when I was living on my own for a number of years. But he then talks about something back in 1904 called the Landlord's Game. That was the exact same thing an original, and then you had another edition that was more commercialized, talking about all this stuff and some great. It wasn't even so much philosophical, because you can tell he's right, but he's also completely insane. So that's some great stuff here. There's also a thing where there's a leak in the roof and it's hitting this like bamboo pipe thing and going in a bucket and that kind of stuff, indicating what we're getting. You almost have to go down to get out, because they can't get out the door. They weren't able to make a phone call. He didn't like the Paxton was lying. Paxton and Barnes were lying. So he basically says, I won't keep you if you don't want to be here, but I need you to decide what you want to do based on your beliefs. He writes belief on one door and disbelief on another, because his house is basically near a mountain and they're going to have to go down to get out. And they take one of two divergent paths, as opposed to one of two non-divergent paths. They basically have to pick one path and go. They decide to go with belief. They end up in this area that's this dungeon-like thing. And then he said, suddenly somebody shows up in a weird cloak, that kind of stuff, messed up and everything, is carrying a pie. There's the blueberry pie. Oh, there's his wife. No, he says, this is the experiment. This is what I wanted to tell you. I have searched for the one true religion. Unfortunately, I found it, but this is somebody that's a prophet of God, an original prophet of God. It's not, by the way, but he's making them buy into all this stuff, all this crazy stuff. A little bit before they got locked in there, there was something that Barnes took. And she basically said, because there's this thing that plays through the speakers. We go back to The Air That I Breathe by the Hollies, that they got upset when Radiohead did Creep, and then I believe the Hollies, or somebody got upset when Lana Del Rey did a version of that. I don't know if I've heard one song by Lana Del Rey, but I know the name. That being said, he even talked about Jar Jar, talking about the Christianity and that kind of stuff. And he even quoted Jar Jar for whatever reason. It was kind of funny. Actually, it was pretty damn funny. I laughed quite a bit. I was in the back of the theater looking like a moron, but nevertheless. So, doing all this, we see this weird lady in this cloak, and he says she's going to eat this pie that has a couple things in, but she's going to die, but then she's going to come back. And then you're going to witness a miracle, and she's going to tell you all this stuff about what happened when she was on the other side. And then while they're freaking out, these girls are freaking out when this woman dies. They're all, this kind of stuff. And suddenly, Paxton notices something's off, like she isn't quite in the same place. Did she move? What the hell's going on? She comes back and spouts some stuff, but then ends with, it's not real. And that's something that basically tips Paxton off on it, and tips Barnes, to be fair. But Barnes basically hands, Paxton this whole thing and says, so here's what you're going to do. This object, it's like a letter opener or whatever. We're going to come up with a code word, and the code word is going to be magic underwear. Tying back to that prank that was pulled, something that embarrassed her. It's going to be something that will trigger a visceral reaction, because a little bit earlier, before they were climbing up the steps and everything, they were talking about, porn and stuff like that, while there was a condom ad, a Magnum condom ad, right on the back of the goddamn deal. They were talking about condoms, and they were talking about porn, they were talking about all this stuff. And that's important for a little bit later. Now, basically this lady, says it's not real, that kind of stuff. He guides her away. And it turns out that both these doors basically lead to about the same damn area. So, whatever path they chose, they were stuck. So then it comes down to where they're about to get, they've just about had it. Elder Kennedy shows up, Topher Grace shows up, tries to talk to him, and talks to him a bit, but can't prove that the girls have been there, even though he has a pretty good idea they've been there. That being said, they managed to pull this rug with these matches, and they're going to start a fire. They're going to set a fire to something, somehow. But they don't end up doing that, and meanwhile, that's when the lady resurrects. It's not real, all that. And then they're going to try to kill him. Barnes is behind him, going to try to do this stuff, and says, magic underwear. Barnes gets slashed because he has a box cutter. So he outsmarted them that time. And now, Barnes is bleeding out. This guy's like, oh, don't worry, she'll come back. And wait a second. He takes the box knife and cuts up her arm and finds this little object. Oh, it's a tracking device. No, it's one of those IUD birth control things that you can put in your arm. I don't know how the fuck that works, but ladies, protect yourself. Just saying, you do whatever you want. I just don't know if something in your arm is going to help. I don't get it. But nevertheless, if you're familiar with it, let me know in the comments. So now Barnes is freaking out and this kind of stuff and can't figure what's going on. There's this leak in the whole thing, and then she sees the table, and then she sees under the table there is a cellar. And he says, only go in that cellar if you're ready to find the one true religion. So she does. She finds a bunch of weird shit going on, all this, she just sees all this waterlogged stuff. I don't know what was this built on, an old castle. I mean, she ends up then getting to this point. She's using a cell phone flashlight, by the way, all this time. She gets to the end and sees that the bike lock is there. And she has the key. She unlocks it, gets in this cold area with these women in cages. Women that he has captured. And the reason he did it to all these, he's done to all these missionaries and everything, and he keeps them on the hungry side and everything, but he manages to keep them alive. They're sorry about that, ladies. He was trimming one's nails and then cuts her finger off because he's completely off his tits. But then, basically tells Paxton, it's all about control and everything. The reason is it's control. That's the one true religion. You go to Haiti and you hand stuff out or whatever, because when people have lost anything, they will basically accept, or they've lost everything, they will basically accept anything. And it's all about control. But then she manages to stab him with that old thing, because, the secret word, the magic underwear, secret words are said. And she manages to get there and manages to get out. And then manages to get up the goddamn hill because he has this little layer thing, actually. This little side door deal where he's got stuff set up. And he's got all this pretty smart, but she managed to figure out quite a bit of this stuff, and that he's been scrambling because something didn't quite work. Then she ended up basically, saying, this is how you did it. She said this before she stabbed him. This is how you did it. You took our coats, you went around, you stole our bike lock, hid our bikes so Elder Kennedy couldn't find us. Then you had one of your prophets or wives or whatever put it on there, and then you switched the body out with somebody else to confuse us. You did all this. It's a bit weird how they wrap that around and everything, and how Paxton was able to figure that out. And then a little bit earlier, before that, Barnes had ripped some board off and had some nails in it and stuff like that, and they were trying to figure out a way to get out before all this shit went south. So they were looking for a way to get out. Now, Barnes is dead, and Paxton isn't sure what she's going to do. But she does end up stabbing him. She ends up trying to basically find her way out, but she has to go back for something. But then he manages to stab her in the gut, because he somehow, even with a neck wound, managed to get up there. Well, I mean, he knows the house well, but still, he got up there and killed her. But now he's basically, and she explains, saying in prayer, you gave her a script, and she didn't quite follow it, saying at the end, it's not real. And that kind of stuff, and she's going to bleed out, and he's going to go for one final blow, and then suddenly, board with nails in it, right to the head. Kang and Kodos are pissed, and right to the head. Barnes came back for like that one last burst, either resurrected or just didn't lose quite enough blood and have one final swing. And then I guess she died, and Paxton escaped and was all covered in snow and all that stuff because it was snowing. It was a really violent storm, and that's it. That's Heretic right there. So yeah, the ending, I did kind of try to both sides the whole deal, but it worked. It really worked. I'm going to give it an A plus actually, just for the performances and stuff like that. But is it a 5-star movie? It's 4.5. There are a few issues, but I've given A pluses to movies that had issues before, and this had so many terrific, moments and great performances. I can't help but praise it. Great stuff by A24, and again, Chloe East, Great job here. Nothing against Sophie Thatcher. Nothing against Hugh Grant. Chloe East to me was a standout. So yeah, A+. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Like, share, subscribe, Twitter handle in the description. I'm John Rickland. I'll see you soon.